0, 1. Let's get started.
Everybody, welcome to Elevate Life, the Leadership Insight Show, born from my podcast, Amputate to Elevate Success, where we unpack what high-level leaders had to amputate in order to elevate. I'm John Register, Paralympic silver medalist, Hall of Fame speaker, and founder of the United States Olympic Committee's Paralympic Military Sports Program here in Arizona for the National Speakers Conference on the golf course that you see. I host this series because we see firsthand that leadership elevation only happens when we are willing to release what no longer serves us. And each week we bring you a new guest whose journey reveals exactly that. This week, we're joined by Dorsey Houtz, the founder and former CEO of Avail Technologies. He built a company that revolutionized public transportation systems while embedding a culture of dignity, innovation, and ownership. But more importantly, he built a legacy, one he was willing to hand off intentionally and humbly. Here's what elevated me in our conversation. Dorsey just didn't plan his exit. He trained his team to rise. He divested himself of decision-making years before stepping away. He let his team fail so that they could grow, and then he let go. Let's take a listen in from a clip from the podcast on Amputate to Elevate Success. The thing I loved is succession and planning, and so you're beloved in the organization because you let other people run with their gifts and their skills and abilities. And so now you have Avail Technologies, almost the handoff time, and you're handing off to Rick. And what is that like? Some of the things that came up, the issues that came up today were around succession planning, right? And that we don't do a good job of training the people that need to take our position. So my question is, many companies fail to execute effective succession planning, but you stepped aside and handed the reins over. How did you know it was time, and what can other leaders learn from how you prepared Avail Technology?
That's a big question, and I think it probably is different for every person, but I think some of the key takeaways that I had was start early on.
Yeah, right.
And it a little bit ties back to the first thing of the ego, right? Is I had anticipated my retirement. Well, actually, I anticipated my retirement back in 2021, but COVID had a way of slowing things down. And so it took a little longer. But it's all started by me realizing that I had to divest myself of the things that I was doing, the things that are typically seen as the president and CEO role within the company. A couple of years in advance of this, I started divesting myself of those and turning those activities over to my chief operating officer, my chief technology officer, and different people. And it was a little bit of a twofold thing. It was a little bit of a test to see who floated to the top, who could take these things on. So it was a test for them, but it was also a test for me because it wasn't easy to step back and watch them do it, because I had to watch them fail.
Right.
I had to watch them fail when I knew I could throw out the safety net. But if I constantly threw out the safety net, then how were they going to learn?
That's right.
I had two partners that helped me start this business. I brought them on when I first conceived starting the business. They were both about 10 years senior of me. So they retired early. And when they retired, we sat down and we said, what are we going to do for long-term succession? And neither them nor myself were ever money-driven people. I started Avail because I'm just an entrepreneur at heart. I love business, and I just love doing business. And when we sat down and started looking at where was succession going to take us years ago, I brought it to the table and I said, guys, we didn't necessarily make this company successful. We cast a vision. The people who work for us made us successful. So that's why we decided to turn this company into an employee-owned company and turn it over to them and let them reap the rewards for it long term.
Now that is rare air. Too many executives confuse their title with their identity. But Dorsey saw succession as a seed, not a surrender. He planned it early, nurtured it consistently, and harvested it when the time was right. Not just for him, but for his people. When I handed off leadership at the Amputee Coalition, I didn't know how much my ego was actually entangled with the impact. Now, it's one thing to grow an organization. My ego was not tied to the role per se, but knowing that there was a lot of work that was going to have to be done, that was the challenge. It was going to be a very heavy lift, and I knew that I did not get them all the way there. My ego was also struggling to understand that I did my job and that it was not my job to take them the rest of the way. In fact, when our new CEO stepped in, I stepped back as fast as I could to allow her to build the culture and build the relationships that she needed to extend the organization. There were times I wanted to step back in, but I forced myself to step back. What freed me was knowing this: real leadership isn't proven by how much we build, but by what remains when we step aside. So here's your action step. Are you building something that outlives you or something that only runs because of you? What would happen if you weren't in the room tomorrow? It's never too early to plant the seeds of succession. Start with one responsibility, hand it off, and let someone else rise. Let's get ready for number 2. We all carry it, but when ego runs the show, leadership becomes a performance instead of a platform. Dorsey Houtz said something that stopped me mid-breath. Amputating my ego gave me freedom. Let's take a listen in. You've been successful, but what have you had to amputate in order to elevate to that success?
You know, that's a very interesting question, and you posed that earlier to the audience, and I thought it was a great question, and it really got people thinking, and I reflected back when you asked it myself. And what I've really had to amputate is my ego. And to me, amputating my ego gave me freedom. Because people too often get held back by their ego. They're always too concerned about what others might think, or that they might fail, or they have to do it themselves. And to me, every time you think that way, all you're creating is obstacles to advance and achieve better things and really advance yourself personally in life. So for me, amputation of my ego opened my future and gave me the freedom to really understand that I could try different things and I didn't have to worry about it, whether it was me doing it.
Right.
I accomplished much more with my team than I do as an individual, and you can't lead a team if you're hiding behind your ego.
Listen closely. This wasn't a throwaway line. It was a reckoning, because ego doesn't just inflate, it isolates. It whispers that you're the only one who can do it, that you're the hero, that needing help is a weakness. In the early days of his rapid rise through Raytheon, Dorsey admitted his ego had ballooned. He was breaking records in leadership. He was breaking records in leadership advancement, but slowly losing sight of the collective mission. It wasn't one moment that changed him, but a series of reflections that revealed this truth. Ego was blocking the very growth he claimed to desire. Letting go of that needed to always be the guy opened the door to collaboration, innovation, and joy. And ironically, that's when he achieved the greatest results, by leading others, not over them. When I became a Paralympic athlete, I carried the silent weight of trying to prove I was still somebody. I masked it well. Motivation, discipline, excellence. I secretly desired to still be whole. And beneath the medals was a man wrestling with ego-fueled exhaustion. The turning point, realizing that inspiration was not all about me being impressive, it was about me being honest, being human. And the moment I stopped needing to be center, my story became a mirror for others to see themselves. The realization that I had already was whole and nothing needed to be fixed was bucking against the narrative that tries to tell me and tell us that we're less than. That's when my speaking career truly elevated, not when I was celebrated, but when I was transparent. So here's your mirror reflection moment. Where is your ego quietly running the show? Where are you still auditioning instead of anchoring? You don't have to amputate your ambition, but you might need to amputate the part that needs the credit. So for your action step this week, give away the stage. Invite someone on your team to lead the next meeting. Then notice how it feels, not just for them, but for you. That's where elevation begins. You don't have to amputate your ambition, but you might need to amputate the part of you that needs the credit. Let's get ready for part number 3. If you're planning a conference, executive summit, or company retreat, and you tried the same old speakers delivering forgettable fluff. Let's talk. I'm John Register, a Hall of Fame keynote speaker who helps leaders amputate what no longer serves them so that they can elevate to their next level. I don't just bring a speech, I bring a strategy, story, and soul. Need someone else for your platform? I built a stable and trusted transformational speakers who deliver every single time. So let's make your next event one they'll talk about for years to come. Visit johnregister.com. That's John Register, just like common spelling, .com, or message me directly. Let's elevate your world together. Anyone can build a business, but only a few build a culture that keeps breathing after they walk out of the door. When I asked Dorsey what values he hoped would remain after his final day at Avail Technologies, he answered without hesitation: open and honest communication, respect, accountability. Let's take a listen in from my interview from this podcast with me on Amputate to Elevate. You built a company focused on innovation and intelligent transportation systems. What values or decisions did you embed into the DNA of Avail to hope that you hope to remain long after you leave the building?
That's another good question, and I kind of smile when you say that because I remember different points along the way where different people joined the organization. I mentioned my father earlier. He, best mentor ever, and the number one value that, and if you ask any one of my customers, what is it Dorsey always says all the time, over and over? Open and honest. I believe in nothing more than open and honest communications. I've never seen the reason to be dishonest. It doesn't make any sense to me because sooner or later when somebody's dishonest, somehow it's going to come up and then the people around you will never trust you again.
Yeah.
So open and honest communications is one of the cornerstones of Avail. Respect, a respect for each other, respect for our company, or our partners, our customers, and actually even respect for our competitors in the industry. And again, I think that a lot of it ties back to the whole ego thing. You can't win them all, and you can't. We have good competition in this industry. So you can't act as if you're always better than them because you know what? Sometimes you're not. And if you can't acknowledge that, you can't give the people the respect they deserve by what they accomplished, then how can you ever expect somebody to come back and do the same for you? So I think that open and honest communications, respect, and accountability are really the cornerstones of Avail.
Not flashy, not complicated, but foundational are the insights I took away from Dorsey. Those three pillars, truth, dignity, and ownership, made Avail more than a tech company. They made it a family. And as Dorsey reflected, he smiled, remembering moments where others joined the team and immediately felt the culture, not because it was written on a wall, but because it was lived in the hallways. He respected competitors. He admitted when others had the better solution, because for him, culture wasn't out of control. It was about character. It brought me back to a time when my wife and I ran our funnel cake stand. Small time compared to the public transit system that Dorsey's running for sure, but the same principles applied. My wife noticed the competition and got nervous. I said, look, there are 10,000 people out here. We'll get our cut. So we went to vendor by vendor and agreed on our pricing. Why? Because respect raises the tide for everyone. Our kids and the high school kids that we hired, they learned a priceless lesson that collaboration doesn't diminish your value, it multiplies your impact. And whether it's funnel cakes or intelligent transit, culture is the through line. If someone walked into your organization today, would they feel your values or read them on a brochure? Culture is never what you say, it's what you model. Choose one of your core values this week and ask your team where they've seen it in action and where they haven't. Then listen, don't defend, don't explain. Culture is shaped more by your ears than your mouth. So let's get ready for our close. This week, we walk through three powerful leadership levers with Dorsey Houtz. Succession planning is a decision, not a delay. Start early and let others lead. Let go with grace. Number 2, ego will cost you elevation. Amputate the need to be the hero and elevate your team instead. Number 3, culture isn't what you say, it's what people feel. Lead with your values that outlive your presence. Here's your focus for this week. Choose one action that you heard today, just one, and implement it within 48 hours. Then ask yourself, what shifted? That's where transformation lives. Be sure to watch the full episode with Dorsey Houtz on Amputate to Elevate Success. We'll put the link in the show notes for you. And if you're ready to go deeper, join my Elevate Life Executive Strategy Session. Our next one happens at the end of the month. Details will be at johnregister.beehive.com. That's johnregister.beehive.com. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Go forth, inspire your world. Bye for now.